and welcome to another episode of Application Development Today. My name is Don Jackson. I'm your host. I'm also a chief technologist here at OpenText. Today's topic is return to office. The previous episode was working from home. A lot of people are now having to return to office, whether that's by design and desire for the individual, or it's a mandate. And I'm pleased to have with me today Dr. Bradley Marks. Dr. Marks and I have known each other for probably two and a half years now. And when I see him in his office, he's one of the people that, to me, epitomizes the attitude and how you handle being in the office. So, Dr. Marks, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, hello. I'm Dr. Bradley Marks. I am a doctor of chiropractic. I did my undergraduate studies at Eastern Michigan University, and then followed through with my doctorate at Sherman College of Chiropractic. So I've been in practice roughly about a decade now. So yeah, I think I got this decent positive mental mindset under control.
Yeah, and did you say go Hurons?
Yeah, sure. All of them. I support all the schools.
Well, for those of you who don't know, right, Eastern Michigan used to be the Hurons. They changed to become the Eagles.
Yep.
There's a big hubbub about that back in I think it was the 90s, when I was going to school. So anyways, I digress a little bit. So Dr. Marks, thank you so much for taking the time today. So let's just jump right into it. A lot of people are having this return to office, with the pandemic being over, and I air quote that because I'm not going to get into the middle of that argument.
Absolutely.
Because COVID's still here, but the pandemic's over. I don't know. But with that happening, a lot of people who were forced to work from home for our 2-week flatten the curve for 3 years. By the way, that's a little callback to the previous episode as well.
Yeah.
So for 2 weeks, and a lot of these companies, they have this office space, and there's still a lot of people who feel that productivity can go up by being co-located, being in the office. So one of the challenges that you have is there are people who struggle with anxiety going back into the office or something like that. So how do you feel? How do you manage to keep that positive attitude when you're in the office?
Yeah, I think the first basic thing is this, right? Like, I love what I do. The only other thing I told you before, and like other people in the office, the only other thing I could imagine being is, independently wealthy, right? Like super wealthy, right? That would be awesome, right? But besides that, it's like, I love what I do. Like, I come in every day. I know that I'm changing people's lives. I get to meet and talk to someone, every little bit. I get to touch so many people's lives. So that in itself is awesome, right? And we can also feed off energies and all these other things that just having interactions with people. And right, we'll talk about some other very interesting facts I came across of actually workplace friendships and relationships, and how that improves productivity and essentially retention and all these other aspects that we look for from a management aspect, right? Is also but as a worker like you and I in a company, right, or in a practice or something like that.
Well, yeah. So you talk about, relationships and retention, the whole concept that's happened in the last few years, the quiet quitting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do you quiet quit if you're in the office? Think about that. Suddenly they're just not there anymore.
Yeah. Pretty much, right? You're like,
there.
Hey, where'd Bob go? Yeah. Well, I haven't seen Bob in a few days. Was he on vacation? No, he just never showed back up. And you're like, really weird. Right. And then I think also, there's a lot of crazy stuff, right, with COVID, right? Personally, like through COVID, right, as a doctor, right, we worked, right? I was there, but we had a reduced schedule, right? So through this, right, I never had to have this positive mental mindset, absolutely, or really positive mental attitude is, I think, is what we were talking about, but it's really plays into positive mental mindset, right? And that comes down to like really looking into how do you look at a situation, right? Are you an optimist? Are you versus a pessimist, right? Are you like, hey, glass is half full, I look at the good things, or hey, do I look at more of those negative things, right? And so I think that's, part of your general approach, right? Looking at the big things. How do you come to your job? Do you love what you do? Is this fun? Do I show up every day and we have a great time? And you try to have a great time, or you're like, oh man, I got to go to work today. I got to do these, other aspects. And maybe we have barriers that there's some just change in thought process, or, some other aspects we'll talk about that can help us boost productivity and boost that ability to go to work, even though, hey, maybe don't want to, right?
Yeah. Because you can't control the environment.
No.
You certainly can control how you react to the environment.
Yeah, or how we adapt to that environment, right?
Yeah,
just like if we're at like a, out in a situation and someone starts acting crazy or something, right? You're like, let's get out of here, right? Let's change our settings, right? Setting scene, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, and you brought up a point, of knowing yourself, right? Knowing what you like, right? Find a role, I've told people this is like my fourth career. I coaching my children, right? I have early adult children now, and they're like, some of them are saying, I don't know what I want to do. I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to know what you want to do, but find something that you enjoy.
Yeah,
find something
exactly.
that, at a minimum, you don't dread going to work every day, because that's just a horrible feeling. You don't want to have that negative attitude, but having that positive attitude, keeping your energy up. That's one of the things I love when I see you in your office, right? Your energy's always high, and everybody gets sick, everybody gets down, everybody has these things, but taking that positive attitude into work and saying, you know what? Yeah, this bad thing happened, but I'm not bringing that into work. I'm going to have this positive attitude. So I really appreciate that. And then I think, you touched on a little bit too, is how you treat others. I'm a big believer in the golden rule, right?
Great. Absolutely.
Treat others how you want to be treated,
right?
Yeah. Would you want to come in and when somebody's,
definitely not. No, right? And that's the other thing too, right? Is like, from my perspective, I'm in a service industry, right? So I'm serving my patients, right? That is my main goal at the end of the day, right? I am serving them to help their health needs, their life needs in the ways that I can aid them, right? It's a little different for, being in an office worker, right? Because you might go, man, I just sit in front of the computer all day, right? I don't have a ton of interactions, or maybe I do have a lot of interactions, right? And I think that definitely can make it difficult through my patients, right? We see lots of people who work from home, right? Some of those people, the only time they leave their home is when they go to the grocery store, right? They may have to run an errand or two, like go to the doctor or something like that. Then other than that, they don't really touch any of the world, right? So it's almost like, unfortunately, with this, like with COVID, right, we've created almost like a society of hermits a little bit, right? We have all this reclusiveness now that it's almost like really awkward. And then we look through the socialness as well, right? So we find binding with other people through other activities. So just like people would watch, like through COVID with my patients, right? You would see them, they would watch movies with each other, like on Zoom or something like that, right? Or more people picked up gaming, or they picked up all these other aspects, right? And so these plays into a lot of other things, like breaking from work and having other things to look forward to and building friendships, right? So I was on the Mayo Clinic's website last night, right? And their positive thinking, they define it as this: positive thinking usually comes with optimism as a key part of effective stress management. Positive thinking just means your approach to unpleasant situations in a more positive and productive way, right? So it's like you don't even have to have this concept of a positive mental mindset, but if you just walk into a situation, right, you just go, okay, like, what can I benefit out of this, right? Instead of looking at all the downsides, right, and jumping 0 to 100 and having negativity, right? Then that will change us, right? They quote this: health benefits that positive thinking may include increased lifespan, lower rate of depression, lower rates of distress and pain, greater resistance to illness, better psychological and physical well-being, better cardiovascular health, and reduced risk of death from cardiovascular disease and stroke, reduced risk of cancer, reduced risk of death from respiratory conditions, reduced risk of death from infections, better coping skills and hardships of times and stress, right? So, man, that's a huge list, right? What I just 10 things, 11 things, and those are just barely scratching the surface of health and well-being, right? And then so that just is very interesting on itself. So you just have like you have the ability to just look at things slightly different and make a choice, right? I think you always talk about, like, you always hear the story about, like, it's like you got the devil and the angel, right? Or the good wolf and the bad wolf, right? What wolf are you going to feed today? You're going to feed the good guy, you're going to feed the bad guy, right? So, and there's a lot of other aspects. There's like, what, 83,000 like 400 seconds or 83,600 seconds in a day. It's kind of like, imagine if you got $83,600 in one day, right? And you just drop $10 on the floor, or 10 bucks. Are you going to worry about that $10? Probably not, because tomorrow you go, man, I got another 84,000 bucks, right? So it's $10 is nothing, right? Well, that's the same thing as don't let people ruin that little 10 seconds, right? You don't get beat up about that 10 seconds, right? So being able to move from crisis to crisis, but with a smooth balance, is really important as well, right? So yeah, just management of all of that stuff. And obviously positive mindset sets you up for that, right? Look at me. I see pretty good amount of patients every day, right? And you go through patients who have very highs to very lows, and very highs and very lows, and very highs and very lows, right? And so, like me as a buffer, right, my positive mental attitude in the office, like maybe like yourself as more of in a management position or a manager, right, you can help buffer some of those people, right, and help them move them through and help them transition into a better positive mental mindset, right? So I think there's a lot of aspects of that.
Yeah, you talked about health and well-being. So one of the things that I was really looking forward to in having this conversation is talking about, you talked about people who sit at a cubicle all day. So some of the people who are going back to the office, that's what they're going to do. They are going to go into the office at whatever time that they're going to start, 8 a.m., let's say, and they are going to sit at their cubicle and stare at their screen until they go to lunch at noon.
Yep.
What happens to the body?
What
happens when you sit like that for 4 hours, 5 hours?
A lot of stuff, right? So you think of it, let's think of it just from, okay, here's a question. Where would you like to start, right? Because that's the real thing. Because we could start from the top down, right? We could start at your brain and talk about else, right? We could talk about from just the physical aspect, right? Of just sitting for long periods of time, right? Because there's cognitive, there's physical ailments and things that come from that as well. Let me see, where was it at here? This is from hbr.org. The average person spends 81,396 hours at work, which is the equivalent of 9 years at work.
Wow.
So yeah, imagine that. You're going to spend 81,000. So then here's the next thing, right? And we talked a little bit about this. That's where friendships and other things in the office, and having a great office environment, creates the positive mental mindset and has the draw and maybe even the allure to have people come to the office and have a great time and produce great, whatever is that, if that's coding, if that's inter-office relationships, if that's with customers, if that's whatever that is, right? Giving customer service, that creates an amazing aspect. And there's some researchers at the University of Pennsylvania and Minnesota did research following that. They not only confirm that close friendships increase workplace productivity, they also find out that friendships create more committed, they communicate better, and they encourage each other, which essentially increases productivity, profitability, job satisfaction, and the retention of those employees, right? So now we would see those employees lasting longer. So we would reduce the need for stuff like more work out of our HR and more training and more funds and allocation and resources to those types of things, right? So then we can really take those resources that we're not spending there, right, and maybe put them back into our, our employees, right, and our people that can have and create that stuff, right? If that's an environment that's better for friends, or if that's something like we talked about a little bit, like if you have like an office goal, or say you're in sales or something, where you can work to a goal to have something like a night out or office party, or something. But I think the culture of that is changing, right? Because I think a lot of people want to show up to work, do their job, and then go home, right? Some people want to have that interaction and not. But I think if employers do make that area a little bit more comfortable, right? And I think with the right mindset, I think we can have more positive mental mindset in the office, especially in the tech world.
Yeah, and I would extend that too, right? So what you talked about is goal setting, right? Yes, and as an employer, right, an employer can set goals for you and reward you, but you don't have to rely on your employer to do that. Right. You could do that yourself. Set yourself goals, right? So I have to get this project done by the end of the week. Well, if I can get it done in a high level of quality by Wednesday, maybe I'm gonna treat myself to a nice dinner, right?
Yeah.
Out with my significant other on Thursday night, right?
Yeah.
Because now I
Goals.
feel
Yeah,
like,
for sure. For
or
sure.
or I'm going to go to lunch with my significant other. I'm going to surprise my significant other with lunch on Thursday because now I'm not super busy on Thursday. There's lots of things that you can do from a goal and a reward setting for your own self, right? Some people, some people get satisfaction, like myself. I did Strength Finders, right? One of my big things is achiever, right? My top strategic theme is one of my top strategic themes is achiever, right? So just that achievement of completing it, of getting that completion helps for me. So understanding, so that top ties back to what we talked about earlier of understanding yourself. There's also the physical aspect, right?
Yeah, I'm a task guy too, right? I like making a list, right? And then I'm like, okay, this is done, this is done, this is done, this is done. Then at the end of the day, you go,
woohoo, look all I got done.
So much stuff done, man. I can actually relax, right? Then you can almost have that guilty pleasure a little bit, right? You might be like, yeah, and I think that's the other thing that plays into the work too, right? So I'm like that too, right? So sometimes coming off of seeing a number of patients or a set period of time, right? Yeah, you got to slow down, go, whoo, I need like a 5-minute break, right? And then that's a great thing at breaking, right? Is taking a break at work. That's pivotal, right? If when you look back at people like yourself and people in the tech industry that stare at screens like, oh my gosh, that's so strenuous on your brain, right? Think about it. Your brain consumes 20% of your energy of your body. Just when you wake up in the day and for it to run on its own, right? 20% of your energy consumption is your brain. Now you pretty much look at yourself like a computer athlete, right? Because that's what you guys are. You guys spend copious amounts of times, 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, right? And someone like yourself who's maybe, into computer working as tech, right? Then a lot of tech people, you're on the computer, right? You game, maybe you're into doing more coding, maybe working into other projects where you're spending more time, right? And that creates a lot of fatigue and a lot of mental fatigue, and the ability to get up and down is really important, right? I found some other research out of the UK, right? It said almost 2/3 or 64% of the people that they didn't take regular breaks from work. Okay. And this was in a 2009 study. And it says, despite of more than half, 52% believing in their health and well-being and productivity will improve if they took a break, but they still find the reason of being too busy, right, cited as they wouldn't take a break, right? I'm just too busy, right? So I think at the same time, right, like you said, if you're an achiever, right, or you're just like, okay, I need to get this stuff done by lunch, right, then I can take a little bit of a break. I think even as an employer, right, you'd be like, man, boss, if I got like 8 hours worth of work and I smashed it out in 6, right, would you care if I took a little break here and there and got up and walked around or did a stretch, or maybe looked at my own personal things that would excite me back into work, that would drive me to do my next 3 or 4 hours of work, right, and then continue that process, right? So I think that's really, really big.
So that's a cool, a key point that you brought up is, taking those breaks, right?
Yes.
There's lots of research out there too about talking about taking a break actually increases your productivity, right? So if I have a 4-hour window that I have to get something done and I work straight for 4 hours, there's this curve of productivity that goes down.
It diminishes huge.
You take that break, right? So maybe you take 5 minutes at the end of every hour to get up, stretch your legs, stretch your back.
Should be actually 25 to 30 minutes. I was looking up some new studies and stuff last night, but 25 to 30 minutes because let's be real. In our society, attention spans are shortening, right? We're highly stimulated individuals, right? And everything's been instant to us nowadays. And so our brains have come to that instant like uptake, right? And so our brains are now, it's harder for us to spend longer time and attention span due to instant access of the phone and technology and overstimulations of our brain and our inability to sleep well and recover well and fatigue, right? So from this APA study of like 1,500 people, they said 79% of employees experience work-related stress. And then nearly 3 in 5 employees reported negative impacts of work-related stress, including lack of interest, motivation. 26% said they had a lack of energy, and a lack of effort at work was down by 20%. 36% reported cognitive wariness, 32% reported emotional exhaustion, and 44% reported physical fatigue. And that was a 40% increase over the previous year.
Wow.
That's staggering. That is staggering.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. Like as a health practitioner, you go, oh my God. Like if you had care and you're giving care and those metrics were that much worse, like oh my God, people would be like up in arms, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, it's almost like a plague, right? This chronic plague that our people are being run down and chronically run down, right? And it's unbelievable,
So
right?
take ownership of that, right?
Right.
As an
Yes.
individual, take ownership of your own mental well-being and your stress. Take regular breaks, stand up. A lot of times when we talked about in the previous session, we talked about having a standing desk or something like that. A lot of times you don't have that option in
Yep.
an office. So back up,
Yeah.
take a break.
Yeah.
You
Back up, take
talked
a
to
break, or do one of those things I tell a lot of my patients is, it's kind of sucks to pay out of your pocket, but they make like, elevating desks, they're cheaper than $100 you could buy at Costco, right? If you're hard up and you got the money, right, and you're working on the laptop, right, just take a couple reams of paper, right, from the office and slam it on there, right? Put the laptop on top of it, bring it up, right? Ergonomics, right? Ergonomics is a huge important thing, right? You brought up the standing desk. Yeah, a lot of I think you'll see more people in the workplace, and more companies are finding out that people need to stand, right? So I think the standing desk, and then maybe the next 5 years, that will be like, I think everywhere, honestly. I think
Yeah.
more research is showing that we need that standing desk. We need our people to get up and down. And yeah, the ergonomics of that, right? We need monitors at eye level, right? We need periphery as close as possible, right? We need to reduce that lurching forward, right, towards our screens and things.
I mean,
I know.
this isn't a good look.
No, not really. Well, sure, if you want to be like, right, if we want to have these like, ridiculous, like really bad postures that pull into, like, we see increase in neck pain and low back pain, cognitive, almost carpal tunnel like syndrome kind of things, like numbness, tingling, like almost our hands and fingers are asleep, they almost feel big and fat, like we can't feel properly. We have all these other aspects that come into this stuff as we do, is just like yourself, right? We talk about with yourself and a lot of our other people, we have these muscular imbalances of our body that really are over dominated by our job day in and day out, and how important that is, because you spend hours and hours of time. And think about it, if you do anything for hours and hours, it gets better and better, right? But if you took your muscle and you just squeezed your muscle for 8 hours straight, that thing would be super sore, right? That's what happens to our people like this, right? So ergonomics are important, right? Getting up and moving is important. Giving a stretching routine is important. It doesn't have to be something that's like, oh my God, I spend 20 or 30 minutes, right? It's something that's more like, okay, I got 5 or 10 minutes, right? Like in the office, right? I design things so you guys can do them sitting in front of the TV, right? So we can make things, right? So I think that's a big thing as well. We're keeping the ergonomics good.
Something you talked about too. You alluded to eye strain, right? So we get a lot of eye strain,
yes,
especially in the IT industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
A ton of, and this particular, the audience for this is, we're geared towards application developers. You spend a ton of time staring at the screen.
Yep.
I adopted a few years ago dark mode for everything.
Yes,
and
I do dark mode for everything.
Huge difference. If dark mode's available, I do that. And I tongue in cheek it when I'm talking with people, presentations. We have a light mode and a dark mode, and I'm like,
yep,
send it to me in dark mode. Well, I made it in light mode. Well, great. Change it to dark mode, because you know what? My eyes, I'm getting to that age where your eyes start to naturally stop working, right? I have these glasses. I have some reading glasses. I probably
you can also do the blue lights, right? Get the blue light glasses, right? You see a lot of gamers have them, or like at least some, we won't put any names, but yeah, you can get blue light glasses. They'll cut that down, right? There's night mode on the computer, right? So you can set it between certain times, which will cut out certain hues, which is less stimulatory to the eyes, right?
And do it on your phone too.
Exactly. Right. I guess that's another good thing to talk about. I'm glad you brought that up. Right. So like, phone use, right? All of us, like, well, you see, let's be real, right? Walk around, look at people, they're like buried in their phone. Right. So it's like, phone mechanics need to come up too. Right. I know it's really uncomfortable. Right. But, one of those things we could have our people do working at the computer is, like, if you find yourself like, slouching, right, just lift that chest up, right? Big, proud chest, right? Think of a big, proud chest, because that helps your neck, your back, puts your spine in a better position when you're sitting, right? It'll reduce some of that fatigue you'll get from overtime working on the computer. But so we talk about the stimulatory effect too. Yeah. So reducing that stimulation on the eyes, reduce the staring down, those small things like that have just astronomical impacts on health and well-being.
Yeah. So one of the things I'd like to talk about now is is how can we prepare ourselves for our return to office day? I mean, you in your industry, you stayed working in the office through the whole time, but a lot of us, we've maybe we've gotten into some bad habits, right? What habits, what should we do to prepare ourselves to go back into the office?
I think it kind of falls back to earlier, right? Find a friend, right? If not find a friend and you don't want to make friends, like it makes it difficult. But I think if you just find some kind of friendship at work, right? We've already heard the productivity of that, right? I think that creating a morning routine, right? So for myself, it's like, yeah, you got to get up and do your normal chores in the morning, right? You get up, brush your teeth, right? Make coffee. For me, feed the cats, do all that other kind of stuff, right? But every morning I do take about 5, 6, 7 minutes, right? To like go out. I actually go outside to my little sun porch, right? And I stand outside there for a couple of minutes. I take some breaths, right? Michigan, it's starting to get cold right in the fall, right? And so I just go outside and get some fresh air just for a few minutes. Even that few minutes, right? When you look at some of the other really top neuroscientists, they'll say like, yeah, if you can make it in your day, in the morning when you get up, go outside, get 20 minutes of sunlight, right, into the face, into the eyes, right? That's a huge portion of vitamin D uptake, just getting your brain going, right? One of those other things, if you're a person who feels like you struggle, then compound your day into the first couple hours of the day, right? If you're not like myself, who commutes a long way into work, 50 miles, right? Then you can get up and you start working from home. Well, if you start working earlier, right, in the first, hour or two that you're up, right, you're actually at your highest cognitive production value, right? So you can produce, if you can get most of your hard stuff done in the first couple hours that you're at work, right? And then you can actually not really taper off, but actually everything else from that point on will become very easy, right? And you're like, well, I'm killing it, right? I'm doing awesome. I'm feeling good, right? I'm getting all this stuff done, right? The hard things are kind of over, and then you can kind of move forward. So yeah, the other thing is, I think, is getting good sleep, right? Sleep is the cornerstone of health, right? Adults really need more than 7 hours of sleep per night. I was just on the sleepfoundation.org. One of their metrics is this: more than a third of adults sleep less than 7 hours, right? So that's really bad, right? That's really bad if we don't, right? Some people say, oh, I just don't sleep that much. Well, okay. And we understand that, but we see that there's very high negative benefits of that, right? So like a male like you and I, right? If you sleep sub 6 hours or 5 to 6 hours a night, right? You actually have a testosterone level 10 years of someone your senior, right? So you have, so for yourself, right? Say you're 50, right? So if you only get 5 or 6 hours of sleep and you run it hard the night before or something, well, your body's only going to be able to run like a 60-year-old tomorrow. Well, that's really reduction in performance, right? That's crazy. That's crazy loss of performance, right? And that just produces things like drowsiness, reduced fatigue, reduced resistance of your body to fight against other things, right? Like we talked about a little bit, like how can you avoid the onset of fatigue and other things? Where you can't, right? What you can really do is you can only prepare to adapt to those things and set yourself up. It's kind of like good planning, right? Or like yourself setting up a good outline to figure out where we need to go as a company with an application or something else, right? That we need to set up a good system, right? Make a schedule or a ritual or something else that you make sure that you get to bed in time. We get a big, huge output of testosterone and a few other growth hormones and other things like that, 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. So if you're a programmer and you're working super late, you're kind of cutting into repair time, right? We need that non-rapid eye movement sleep, right? So we go through different portions of sleep, right? So we have that light sleep, right? And then we go into essentially deep sleep, and deep sleep's broken down into non-rapid eye movement and rapid eye movement, right? Rapid eye movement is where we sleep. Non-rapid eye movement is where we do that muscular repair, right? So if we think about ourselves, we're hunched over the computer, we're going to work our muscles more, right? Well, we need to spend more time in that muscular repair so that we can feel that we've got that regenerative portion of our body, right? So as developers and things, right, as tech people, you guys use your brains, right? Well, you're going to need more light sleep, right? Light sleep is going to wipe our brain, right? Take that mental fatigue away. So sleep is so important, right? They reported that drowsy driving was responsible for more than 6,000 fatal car crashes last year.
Wow. Think about that, guys. You don't want to do drowsy driving. So no. you talked about and alluded a little bit to vitamin D and taking, and I'm a firm believer in really understanding what your body needs and what your body's not getting from your environment and supplementing that. I think that leads into a question. The last question I wanted to ask you is,
Mhm.
as you could probably hear in my voice, right?
Right.
I managed to pick up something last week. I was at a conference last week and shaking hands with a lot of people, and
Yep.
maybe there was a little bit of alcohol involved in the evening.
Sure.
There may have been a giant alcohol thing that got delivered to the table that we all shared. Probably wasn't a good decision on my part to
Sure it
partake.
was. Right.
But how do you avoid? You've been frankly a hermit for the last 3 years, and
Yeah.
so you don't have that natural immunity anymore. Your immunity has response has gone down because you haven't been exposed to a lot of these things. What are some of the steps that we can take as individuals to prevent us from catching something or reduce the likelihood that we're going to catch something as we return to the office and we're now interfacing with all these people more?
Yeah. So I would say number one thing, sleep hygiene, right? Your body can't fight a war if it's wore out, right? It's plain and simple. It's like anything, right? Or think of it like from a processor standpoint, right? If you're putting so much at that processor and you're bogging it down and it's being funneled in there and it can't make those processes, right? It's just going to lag and be slow. Same thing, just like our bodies and our systems are the same way. I think the other thing is so getting good sleep, hygiene just in general, right? Okay, so we see through the day bacteria and viruses and other things like that. So good hygiene, right? Supplementing, right? So I can tell you what I supplement with, right? So you take like a multivitamin. I take a vitamin D, right? Take vitamin K with that. Usually they come together, right? Vitamin K is a co-transporter for vitamin D into the cells and things like that, right? We can take things like that are like antivirals, right? So you have things like amino acid based, like L-lysine. L-lysine is a antiviral. Yeah, there's a lots of other things out there. There's a lot of other natural things you can take. We don't need to spend lots of money. You can actually just supplement with your food, right? That's another huge thing. Think about it like this, right? If we eat a lot of high processed foods, which essentially break down into simple carbohydrates, which break down into sugar, that's not really a great fuel source, right? So that's why we need meats and vegetables and all these other things. If you don't eat meat, that's great, right? You can get proteins and other things the other way, but we need the fundamental building blocks to help rebuild muscle and tissue and cells so that we can have that energy to do that production, right? So I think that's a huge thing as well. And obviously positive mental mindset, right? Looking at
Yeah.
the best of things, right? I mean, we saw those stuff, right? So, I mean, it almost seems like it's too basic, but unfortunately we'd be coming into a high technology world, right? In a high intelligence world. And I think that we just overthink the basic things, right? I feel like when we
Yeah.
look at any of your kids, right? People who go back to sports, you look at any of those things, they go, what do they say? Go back to the basics, right? We're going to go back to the basics. We're going to do the fundamental things perfectly, right? And I think that's what we really have to do to bring ourselves back.
Yeah. You talk about sporting events. Any sporting event you listen to, at some point during the broadcast, they will talk about fundamentals, right? Good
Yeah.
fundamentals.
Yeah.
We have the same thing with our bodies. You need good fundamentals, and when you focus on these higher processing tasks, you tend to forget to do the fundamentals.
Yes.
So, Dr. Marks, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I love your
Absolutely.
shirt. If you want to stand up for the
Sure.
audience to get to see it, I got your back. That's absolutely hilarious. I appreciate that. So,
Absolutely. Anytime.
One of the things I do for all of our featured guests is we give an opportunity for you to provide a words of wisdom. It could be topic related to this return to office, being healthy, positive mindset that we've talked about, or it could be completely something different. There was this commercial way back in the day. Google it if you want, from a company that doesn't exist anymore called Highland, that did. They had a President's Day commercial where one of the guys said, "Never eat spinach with a stranger." That's a weird word of wisdom, but hey, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember that. But what are Dr. Marks's words of wisdom, parting thoughts you'd like to give to the audience?
I think it's just this, right? We talked about the golden rule earlier, is just treat others how you want to be treated. And I think that's like just the fundamental basis, right? I think that, in our highly crazed world and our highly technology advanced and highly overstimulated world, I think, yeah, if you go back to the basics, do the basics really well, sleep, I think take care of your body. For me, obviously, chiropractic is one of those things, right? Making sure that your spine and your nervous system, right? Your brain, your spinal cord, and the nerves that go to every tissue, cell, and organ functions well, right? So that's just like making sure that the computer system's running well, right? Run diagnostics, check it out, make sure everything's running, right? Perfectly, right? Check out all your parts, right? If you don't know what you're laxed in, right? Go talk to your doctor, right? Go get some blood testing done, right? Go get some other testing done so you can find those discrepancies. Like finding weaknesses in us is not a bad thing, right? It's a good thing, right? That shows us what we need to work on and how we can make ourselves better, right? I guess right there, right? That's positive mental mindset right there, right? Is just finding those things. So, I personally think in a tech world where I see lots of people on the computer that end up coming with neck pain, mid back pain, low back pain, almost carpal tunnel like syndromes, all kinds of these other pains and issues, I'd say go get your spine checked, right? It's kind of like you go to the dentist and make sure you get your teeth checked out, right? We just don't see our teeth. We see our teeth, we don't see our spine, right? Our spine is like the same way, made out of bone. If we don't take care of it, it wears, it looks nasty. We don't want a nasty smile, right? So same thing with our backs and our spines, right? So it'll just give us better performance. We can work longer. We'll feel better. I think that's the biggest thing. And keep up, guys. You guys are amazing. If you don't hear that enough, right? Tell each other you guys are amazing, because you guys work very hard. So yes, I guess that'd be my biggest parting words.
Awesome. So thanks for taking the time today, Dr.
My pleasure.
Marks. And I hope everyone enjoyed this session, this kind of two-part series that we did. We did the working from home, and then we did the returning to office. As always, if you have ideas, these were ideas that somebody sent in to me. Please send it in to my email, djackson3@opentext.com. And Dr. Marks, once again, thank you for taking the time today.
Absolutely.
I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
I can't wait to see you in the office.
All right. Cheers. If you liked the video, please click the like button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we release new videos.